Okay, it is Tuesday, February the 22nd. Or as some have been reminding me today, it's 2/22/22. That's all I've been hearing all day. 2/22/22. So doesn't happen very often, but we got it now. And been paying attention all day to the news. I don't know if you guys have, because I do. I pay attention to the news of what's going on. And war is imminent. And I say some prayers for all of my family and friends and people that I know that are military people, because they could be called out at any time. So it's really something. Um, I know it sometimes affects some of my students even. Either they get called, or either my the spouses of them. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Share the screen here. All right, here we go. And I see my usual group is here. Thank you guys for being so faithful and on point. I like student interest. It shows in your grades. And let's start with this calendar here. And as I said, I like the month view. Here we are, 22nd. Initial post due tonight. Live lecture, reply post due Saturday. Sunday, your assignment is due along with your live classroom lecture, and then of course your quiz. So those of you who are here can get that out of the way today. And then after that, the next time we meet will be in March. And what does that mean? That means that that's the end. That's the last month in the course. For the 18th is when the course ends. Remind you again, assignments due on the 18th. The 19th, can't do it. Also, I want to remind you that at the end of this week, any assignments that are not completed by today, 1 to 3, not by today, but by the day that your next assignments are due, which is Sunday, the end of the day, 1 to 3 cannot be turned in unless we have some circumstances that I'm aware of, that you made me aware of. Okay, so let's leave the calendar. Let's go to the content, starting out with the announcement. That's week 3. And let's put that down there. Social trends, mental health, and criminal behavior. We'll talk about that. That is one of the recurring problems with crime in our time today, next to the drug issue. But it's pretty devastating. And then now, thank God that law enforcement, corrections, and other professionals are being trained to deal with those kinds of individuals. I have a daughter who is a clinical psychologist in Cook County Jail. Excuse me a second. Wow. And so she tells me about some of the times when she has to deal with individuals. You'd be surprised at some of the stuff that occurs. And so anyway, we have to deal with that. And as criminal justice professionals, we have to be aware of it and be empathetic and sympathetic in dealing with that. But just think about it, as I said before in this class, that if you have people who use drugs and they have a mental health issue, that's devastating. Okay. So anyway, chapter 3 and 4 of your textbook is what you're reading. And then these links that I'm pointing to here, you want to read those and use those as well. Activities, mental health and risk factors for substance abuse and addiction. Enforcement policies impact on drugs and crime. Social trends, and then there's a knowledge check. Discussion posts. Social policies and trends. I told you already, Tuesday, which is tonight, and Saturday, reply posts. And then the written assignment, connection between drugs, mental health, and crime. That's an assignment that I've kind of prepped you for it from day one in this course, along with your quiz. Okay. And you know my motto, adversity is the springboard to success. All right. So let's get the formalities out of the way. I think that's it. Yeah. So let's go into the module. Let's first look at the assignment, the written assignment. Remember, we're using Dave, okay, as a subject relating to law, mental health, and corrections. But this week it'll be mental health. So you're going to address the connection between mental health and the self-medication phenomenon, which you should be aware of is that what people do is they begin to take painkillers, they begin to take all other kind of medication, and it kind of, as they say, enhances the issue of the mental health that they have. Identify the connection, how that impacted Dave. Summarize the risk factors for criminal behavior due to substance abuse and mental illness. Identify Dave's risk factors and explain the relationship between substance abuse and criminal behavior. We have been talking about that like nonstop. Okay. Now, here are the requirements. It says at least one credible source. Now, I have said this all the time. One is not enough. The point of the matter is, and I don't like them even putting that in there like that. I guess I probably could amend it, but I won't. But provide credible sources. Remember the purpose for credible sources or citations. They provide support for the statements that you include in your papers. So therefore, you make a statement about 50 grams of this or that plus this or that equals this. And where'd you get that? You didn't just get that off the top of your head. You cite the source of that information. That's very simple using APA, and you guys should be familiar with APA. If not, you should go to a tutor, get some help, get that done. Very important. Remember, it's citations in the body and references at the end. In a 2 to 3 page paper, spaced double, not single space, please. Double space, please. Properly formatted, okay? in the form of a Word document. Very important. Very, very, very important. But I cannot tell you what will happen to you if you don't have credible sources. Here is what's going to happen to you. You'll end up in this column right off the bat. Right off the bat. I mean, even though there's a section here that says no credible sources, but that's just a reminder about it. But let me show you why I say that. I operate on mastery, as you know. Exemplary description of the connection with thorough details on how this connection impacted Dave. How can you do that without providing citations? You can't do it. Even I can't do it. You have to do that. Risk factors, summary of the risk factors with thorough details. And I have had students to say to me, well, it only refers to credible sources in one section. No, it's throughout the paper. But there's a reason why it's emphasized too. Exemplary. So look what happens when you get all the way over here, just to show you those two. Incomplete. Incomplete or missing details. What's a key detail? The citation or source that you use to support your statements. Same thing here. But then it says here, no credible sources. Notice over here, attempted with errors. Attempted citation with minor errors. Credible sources are cited with no errors. That's when you follow the straight APA path. So the key thing is to stay in an exemplary column, you got to have credible sources properly APA formatted. And finally, the content of the paper. The content of the paper needs to be not one page, but 2 pages. 2 pages, double space, with no errors in spelling, grammar, or punctuation. Very, 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 very important. Very important. Very, very, very important. I cannot tell you how many times I've had, you can't even get to exemplary if you miss this, because then you don't have exemplary explanation, exemplary summary, or exemplary description. So I can't give you exemplary in these columns and then get down here and say you got 1 page or 1.5 pages. Wouldn't work. All right. It would make a mockery out of the rubric. If you got it, let me know. You got it? Okay. I'm sure everybody here has it. Yep. Okay. But this is for those who are not here. I had a student one time says, I'm at the lectures all the time and you keep saying the same thing over. I'm not saying it to you then. Oh gosh. Anyway, you get the point. I'm just trying to elevate my students to a higher level. That's what I do. That's what any good leader does. That's what any good coach does, is motivate students. I certainly was motivated in life coming up. I'm ever eternally grateful for several professors I had, particularly one in law school, when I was ready to quit. Believe it or not, I was ready to quit. But it was because of finances that put pressure on me. Oh, that probably sounds like a familiar tune to many of you. But the fact of the matter is she said, no way. And that's the same way I am. If I knew about it with you, I'm saying, come on, let's, she didn't cut me no checks or nothing like that. She didn't cut me no slack. She just said, Richard, you can go, you can make it. You can make it through that. And she was right. Yeah. Thank God she's still, those of you on Facebook, if you ever go back and you look at some of my pictures, you'll see me with her she's got white hair now and she's walking with a cane. But I'm not walking with a cane yet. My back bothers me, but anyway. So guys, please, I'm imploring and encouraging you to do that, because I want you to succeed. All right, enough on that. My wife says, you sound like, yeah, thank you, Korea. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. Get out of your comfort zone, right? Get out of that comfort zone. Everybody wants to stay in the comfort zone. I said, no, as I say in the pulpit, launch out into the deep. Yeah, I know if you go fishing, and if you know anything about fishing, you want to launch out into the deep, because that's where the fish are. Okay, sometimes they're on the surface, but not most of the time. All right, they only do that at meal time, like my kids do. They only come to the table at meal time. Okay, discussion. Let's deal with enforcement or treatment. So be knowledgeable before you even dive into this, that um, the war on drugs is two thumbs down. It's because of the fact that it's not stopping or solving the problem. Remember, the problem with people has to do with treatment and rehabilitation. We have come to know that. Uh, Not lock them up and throw away the keys. Um, so treatment and rehabilitation is the best results. Getting them, in other words, from 12 to 6. From 12 o'clock to 6. Everybody know when I say 12 to 6? Remember that? Okay, good. Want to get to 6 o'clock and stay on 6 o'clock and build on 6 o'clock. Don't go to 7, because you'll be heading back to 12 again. So anyway, read this little article here on optimal dynamic allocation of treatment and enforcement. And then for your initial post, select either enforcement or treatment and rehabilitation. If you select enforcement, explain why we need to continue enforcement, the war on drugs. I mean, which we still do need that. Let me put it to that way, because there's a certain audience that needs that, and that's the dealers. I mean, I'm talking about the hardcore dealers, not the typical dealers that we might see, because we don't see the hardcore dealers. The hardcore dealers live in mansions and live in, they have businesses that launder money and stuff like that. And as a lawyer, know about them extremely well, because I was a lawyer for some of them. Um, if you selected treatment, explain why we need to focus on treatment and rehabilitation. Um, don't everybody say Professor Wright said, even though that's true. Uh, Give a little more than that, but you know why I'm saying it, because of the things that I share during my lectures. Okay. I'm laughing because one of the comments that students make when they do the surveys at the end of the course is that Professor Wright he's really funny, but he's focused on what he's doing, but he presents it in a way that makes you laugh sometimes. That's not a crime. I mean, I think that's a good thing, um, especially with those of us who understand raising kids, dogs, cats, gerbils. I didn't raise any cats, but I raised gerbils and dogs and kids. So defend your position, okay? And then reply posts deal with a peer who has something opposite. Okay. All right. I always funny that whenever I look down here at the um, people who have supplied responses early, usually they're familiar names, and I kind of look at them. But anyway, that's good because as you already know, you don't post first, you can't see nothing. All right. So now we got a quiz, which no, I'm not clicking on it because it'll show the quiz itself and it'll show the suggested answer. Um, Live classroom recording, you know what that is because you're here. Then your live classroom phrase, you click on that and you submit your assignment and your key phrase and you get your 5 points. Okay, so we're going to talk about these primary 3 areas, starting with the meat of it, mental health and risk factors for substance abuse and addiction. Individuals who have, um, um, if I get into this esoteric statistical stuff, mental health individuals are prime for substance abuse and addiction because you will see that looking at the statistics here, um, in America, it says all recorded mental health patients, 38% use alcohol, 44% use cocaine, 40% smoke cigarettes. Now, here's the deal. Notice something very interesting about this. One of the cheapest highs you can get is with crack cocaine, but it's also one of the most dangerous, as I've expressed why, based on my police work, um, based on what I have studied down through the years, and also my personal experience with losing my baby sister. Now, look at it. Nearly half cocaine. And when they talk about cocaine, they're talking about the crack because it's a cheap high, but it's a short high. And it's one that once you get into it, you're hooked on it and it sucks you in like a vacuum and it holds you bondage and turn you into a slave to it. So it becomes your master and controls your every thought, your actions and deeds. So I'm not focusing too much on the cigarette issue, but these first two, and then alcohol in there as well. Okay. Did you not know that every time, and I found this out, I took a pharmacology class when I was in college, and every drink of alcohol you take kills brain cells. Did you know that? Yes. Think about what I'm saying here. Yeah. Yep. You can do some research and you'll find that. But and brain cells, unlike cells, let's say you cut yourself or something like that, they regenerate and then they heal. But the brain cells don't come back. Yeah. Yeah, it's a scary thought. But that is why, if you think about it, pay attention to people uh, who drink a lot and use drugs and stuff like that. They're like, you know how the light bulb has a filament? If you ever look at a light bulb, you can see the filament going across. And that when the light bulb no longer works, that filament is not connecting to the other side. And that's what happens in the mind. And the other thing is that you're stretching it until it just breaks and it blows. And then you have to replace it. But you can't do that with the brain. And so I always use the statement that whenever people drink alcohol, they don't realize it. They slowly become stupider and stupider and stupider. I'm not cracking at the person. I'm trying to explain that what causes those kind of activities is lack of cerebrality or brain functioning according to the way that it should. Okay. So it's like your Intel in your computer. Almost every computer has Intel. I'm looking at mine right now. And that chip in there is there to distribute the information. Well, the same thing here. And so your chip, which is this thing, the medulla oblongata, as somebody said, I think it was Chris Tucker in a movie. Shoot me in the medulla oblongata. I mean, shoot him in the head where the brain is. The point of the matter is that it's a medical term actually for the brain, and you begin to damage that, and again the cells. So opioids, methamphetamines, marijuana, as legal as it might become, and other drugs are often used by mental health issues to cope with their illness. Uh, things to suppress things. There's a term called crawl into the bottle. That means you drink. I have an uncle who years ago, I remember in 1969, he was my natural mother's brother, and they found him in the streets. Cirrhosis of the liver. He had died. He just keeled over and died in the streets. The guy that I took over as librarian at the law firm, a guy named Roger King. Roger was a nice guy, but he always drank, and they found him in the streets. But what I'm trying to get across to you guys is these statistics and numbers, they show. My daughter confirmed this with me. In the field of psychology, when one suffers from mental health disorders, along with substance abuse, it's dual diagnosis and can lead to complicated issues for our criminal justice system, as I've been talking about constantly, constantly. So these are sick people. These are sick people. Let me see, what was the chat there? It went real quick. This is a weird question. But prescribed medications for depression, mental health, are those suppressants like illegal drugs? Well, no, they're legal because they're supposed to be based on quantity and also what else is in there. Remember, a lot of illegal drugs are not pure, and they have cut it with the various things that we've talked about in previous weeks. So you get those things. But the point of the matter is that gets back to the point and that's a very good question that we raised earlier, and that is how you can start innocently with painkillers, and the excessive use of them can lead to um, problems, then also lead you to other drugs or illegal drugs. But that's an excellent question. So does that answer your question? Okay. Now, mental disorder. Look at the co-concur. Look at how I was talked about that a few minutes ago. But I'm trying to take you look at this picture. Okay, morbidity is when two or more disorders in the same person interact, and you know they're in pretty bad shape. So if you have a mental disorder, and then you have other substance abuses that intervene. Look at how they cross. You see, the mental disorder crosses with the substance abuse, and at this point, then that's when the two come together and make it worse. So you see the point. You can just see a graphic picture of this, and you can look at the survey, and you can see how substance use disorder affected mental illness among people that are 18 and older. Look at this. Adults had mental illness, you know, but not substance use. Million adults had just mental illness. But then when you had them 9.2%, which is the smallest number, but remember, that's magnified in reality, dealing with it. Those are the kind of people that you might get a call as a police officer to come to, and you end up, rather than shooting them, rather than tasing them, you shoot them. They might have a weapon in their hand or something. But the point of the matter is that you were trained in the academy how to de-escalate. But it used to be the old shoot the maim. We don't do that anymore. Adults that did not have substance use disorder, but mental illness, 10.2. Okay. So the point of the matter is you got large numbers. So then we come to what I was talking about a few moments ago in response to Madison, is that I think it was Madison, right, who asked that question. Yeah. So the stress that people face and life experience by any form of mental illness can create unbearable situations of hopelessness and emotional pain. I went through that kind of stuff, but I didn't. I'll use a term that came from, it's called "Don't Drink the Kool-Aid," but it came from Jim Jones in Guyana. Some of you may or may not know about what that is, where you ingest the deadly poison and it becomes a part of you. So then you have to have treatment. I went through some therapy, but I didn't have a lot of therapy. But one of the reasons why I didn't have major problems is because I didn't use drugs and I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't smoke. So my siblings, on the other hand, as I said, what happened to my baby sister, but I had two other sisters that I didn't talk a lot about who, well, no, I had one other sister who overdosed and then disappeared. We couldn't find her. And she's a very smart young girl, but she died at an early age, left 3 children, 2 kids. I think it was 2 kids. Yeah, a son and a daughter who are both grown now. But without any kind of treatment, these people are left to cope by whatever means that they find. And often the distress to treat their symptoms with street drugs when other options appear, but they don't think like that. So self-medication is presented by turning to alcohol and other types of things that alleviate anxiety, resulting in oftentimes depression, suicide, and then the not a quality of life, a zombieism in terms of life, the way that individual operates. Some medication side effects cause a sluggish feeling. So cocaine and meth can be used to stimulate the individual. And so what it does is it takes them up to a high, but then, as it says, they crash. Think about that. It's like too much drinking on Saturday night, and you wake up Sunday morning and your head feels like, oh, somebody's been beating you all night. But that's because of what you put in it. So it does little to alleviate mental illness. There needs to be some professional treatment. Look at what else. It triggers paranoia, delusions, depressions, and then poor decision making comes about when drugs are included. So that results in you becoming a criminal. Okay, so it's doom and gloom, but I'm just trying to show you how it's compounded by the information that we are talking about. Look at this, and this is I always found very interesting whenever I looked at this. This was very good statement. Um, Looking at criminal behavior is no longer as simple as uh, see the crime, arrest, prosecute, incarcerate the offender. That's what I said. That's called lock them up and throw away the key. But due process needs to consider the mens rea, which is the state of mind or the intent of the individual, and take steps to manage the root causes of criminal behavior. That's what I'm talking about. Treating the issue, the source. Okay. Oh, they give them 20 years. They're going to 20 years doesn't matter to them because they're still going to be sick when they come out. You got to treat them. Okay. It's a medical issue, to be honest with you. Risk factors for addiction, um, biological. That's based on the, uh, the, the disorders and things that happen within the body. How you addiction among biological family members, bipolar, learning disabilities. A lot of those kinds of things are related biologically to individuals who have mental health and drug addiction, psychological, low self-esteem, external locus, looking outside of oneself for solutions instead of examining yourself, passivity. It's okay. It's just always like this. I mean, I'm just showing you that's how the mind is functioning. Post-traumatic stress, which a lot of our vets, I was looking at a special that was on CNN 2 nights ago about, and was on again last night uh, about LBJ, the President of the United States and the Vietnam War, and the effects that it had on many individuals. Some of my friends went there and never came back. And I was targeted to go, but they wouldn't take me because I was the only male in the family at that time with my dad. And then I had sisters. The point of the matter is that when I say that they didn't make it back, is that even if they came back, they weren't the same. They were suffering from PSD. Um, they were suffering from I can't think of the other term. Um, they had other major issues, you know. And the point of the matter is that those people were basically destroyed. Then the environment, um, ready to access to the good drugs. In other words, they're there. They're easy to get to. Um, Peers, uh, being alienated or oppressed. You know, they used to always call me the Reverend when I was a young kid. And I said, don't call me that. I'll never be a Reverend. Well, I ended up becoming one. But even now, many of my friends who are still around will tell you, they says Richard Wright was always somebody who was not a goody two shoes because I was never that, but I was one who I wasn't afraid to use drugs. I just I saw the effects of what it did to others, and you know, but we got a major problem now dealing with juveniles. My daughter, 13-year-old, was telling me about an incident that happened at her school where the police came in and they had dogs and they went to the lockers and they found lots of drugs. This is a middle school. I'm sure you guys are familiar with those kind of things, and we're in a good community, and it's not just the urban areas. But the point of the matter is that it's out here. But look at the risk factors that come about. You know, it reminds me of my coming up, chaotic home environment, ineffective parenting. You know, um, little mutual attachment and nurturing, inappropriate, um, shy or aggressive classroom behavior. I taught special education, so I know all about this. Um, Academic failure, low academic aspirations, poor social coping, affiliation with deviant peers, perceived external use of drugs, parental substance abuse. So that's what the risk factors are, because you got so many young people who just grow up and they put their hands in a chair and it's just just it's all hopeless. There were times when I saw this on a regular basis, guys. That's why my story is something, because that's what I grew up in, but I didn't drink the Kool-Aid, but some of my siblings did. But the factors that counteract that are the things that I have. My wife and I, that I'm married to now 27 years, going on 28, strong family bonds. My daughter, my that she and I have, she's not in the house, but she had some issues that she decided she wanted to try to do some things, and she got um, shown the door, and so um, she. I was very upset with her, and so now we're coming back together. But the point of the matter is I try to teach you. You try to teach the kids, even when you set an example. You know, even if you put it out there, it's almost like, hey, I don't ever feel that my efforts are in vain. Just like with my students, I don't feel like that. I really don't. I haven't any student that really knows me. They don't they don't know I'm not like that. But the point of the matter is that it produces strength in the individual, clear parental expectations, academic success. Yeah, strong bonds with organizations and institutions, church. I believe in God. I don't hide it. You know, I have my hat that I wear on my radio show, and it says right here, God is able. That's me. That's my foundation. I'm not pushing it on anybody, but it has been a great thing for me. Um, that's my drug. Okay. All right. So anyway, conventional norms about drugs and alcohol. The key thing is that um, everybody needs to be supported, no matter how. That's why, as a lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, I got to know many young people who fell in the risk factor category as opposed to the protective factors. And you'll be surprised. And if you ever work, when you begin to work in the system, you'll see it. Anyway, substance abuse in the juvenile justice system is that um, if it's untreated, look, it's associated with ADHD. I ran a lot of that, attention deficit disorders. Dealt with a lot of that when I was teaching special ed. But then I have a daughter who teaches regular ed, and she dealt with it too because they were not diagnosed. Uh, the medicines um, don't increase the risk of substance use disorder. But the point of the matter is like Ritalin. Man, those some of those kids, they were put on Ritalin and then they were in, I was like a zombie state, and I felt bad for them, you know. And the point of the matter is that these are issues that result in juvenile delinquency and adult crime that comes from abuse dependent on drugs. Okay, and then that's the extent of it. Um, the last thing on this topic is one of the largest nationally represented samples of people suggest that substance use disorders were at increased risk for non-medical use of prescription opioids. and 40%, 43% of the people with substance use disorders for non-medical use of painkillers have diagnosed or symptoms of mental health disorders, often resulting in anxiety and depression. So that was what I was saying earlier about the innocent individuals. You're going to see that in weeks to come when we have a few videos. So we need to not abandon these people, and we need to um, help them. All right. All of the data points to the need of a new policy approach to minimize the abandonment of those individuals that enter the criminal justice system, to simple institutionalization in prison, or just putting them back on the streets. No, treat them. Period. All right. That's references there. Oh, if you get a chance to see if you can get this PDF here, Common Morbidity Substance Use Disorders Research Report. It's a pretty good one. I think you can still get it up. Let me make sure before we move on. It's all right to spend a lot of time on this topic for this lecture because pretty much that's the substance of the lecture. Yeah, here you go. Check it out. Check it out. I just wanted to see if you can, so you can download it and look at it. It'll knock your socks off. And then it's something that you can consider as a source for your research. Anyway, I just said that, so hint, hint, hint. Okay. Let's see. So next, let's go to enforcement policies. And we've kind of almost, look at this. You see how, prohibition ends. I went to high school in Chicago, Fanger High School, and one of uh, one of the greatest graduates of that school is a very well-known FBI agent in Chicago that Al Capone, he was his nemesis. His name was Elliot Ness. You guys ever heard that name, Elliot Ness, before? You've heard that before? I mean, there was a movie Kevin Costner did called The Untouchables. You ever heard of it? Any you guys? None of you? Well, anyway, he brought down because prohibition was you couldn't even alcohol. It allowed people to legally buy alcohol. So what they did was they bootlegged liquor. So dealing with punishment and rehabilitation, this is just a history starting back from 1914 when cocaine became illegal, marijuana in 37. Look at where we are now with it. In the 60s, unlawful use of marijuana and cocaine coincided with uh, music. Oh yeah, yeah, that was the period of Purple Haze, Jimi Hendrix, the play Hair, a lot of the groups um, that dealing with LSD, um, mind altering. They said mind expanding. It was mind altering drugs. Marijuana was illegal again in the 70s when it became a Schedule 1. Check this out. But you didn't know that one. In the 80s, lawmakers began the war on drugs by severely criminalizing drugs and substance abuse and imposing mandatory sentences, which, as I said, if used properly with the proper audience, it works. But don't get the innocent, sick people caught up in that we've been talking about primarily here, particularly those with mental health issues. And so then they start talking about the war on drugs, sentencing. If you were caught with a rock or crack cocaine, you were incarcerated. And then there was a disproportionate number of minorities who this happened with. And as I said, crack is cheap, but dangerous. Then they had zero tolerance approaches to these. When I was a police officer in Ford Heights, you've heard me talk about that. It was called the crack cocaine capital of the south suburbs. A lot of crack houses. There were houses that they used to cook the stuff. But the mandatory sentencing began to create overloads in jails and prisons and destroyed the lives of many individuals. Um, Look, small quantities of marijuana were felonies and destroyed the future of many college-age students. Did you know that if you have a drug conviction, that you can't take out a federal student loan? Did you know that? Anybody know that? Everybody there? Did everybody go to sleep? Oh, am I not clicking down? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can't. It can mess you up big time, not to mention your employment opportunities. Okay. So at the beginning of the 21st century, the criminal justice system limited most of its consideration of mental health to competency to stand trial and legal insanity, which I thought was a bunch of garbage. Um, Mental illness wasn't paid attention to, and conviction, mitigating, and mental illness as a mitigating factor for conviction and treatment was almost non-existent. Think about that statement. It was not a mitigating factor is something that should recognize that to reduce your sentence because you have an issue that caused you to do this, that monkey on your back, so to speak. But then it started to change, and there's a shift. This is a typical picture that you might see of a person that's caught in that situation. Look how this kid looks hopeless here. And then you go down. And then there are the racial aspects of it where it happened. Ford Heights, by the way, was a predominantly black community, and it's something. Employment problems, lack of education, a lot of single family um, um, parents, um, tough. And so before the war on drugs, African Americans, regardless of class and status, did not view ex-cons as heroes. In more recent times, the successful drug dealer became the role model. That's right, they did movies. We had Superfly. Anybody ever heard of Superfly? Superfly. Oh yeah, it was a movie. A guy named Ron O'Neal played the role. Google it, you'll see. And he was a drug dealer. There were several movies. There was a guy I knew who was a musician, Curtis Mayfield from Chicago, sang in a group called the Impressions, and he succumbed to drugs. Donny Hathaway. You ever heard the name Donny Hathaway? You ever heard the song? Every year they play This Christmas. It's called Fireside Ringing Bells. Da 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 da. This Christmas. You've heard that. Dun, 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 dun. That's how the music went. Yeah, that's Donny Hathaway. And Donny Hathaway was left early on drugs. My ex brother-in-law, who was his drug dealer, I couldn't stand that guy. He also was the drug dealer for Natalie Cole. You know that name? Inseparable. Her dad was Nat King Cole, famous singer, black singer. But uh, if you could go back and see her and her father singing together, they put together the song. But anyway, she lived down the street from where I lived for a while when she married a guy named Marvin Yancey. The point I'm just bringing to you is that I'm familiar with seeing this stuff up close and personal, and guys like this guy, his name was Pete. Uh, he had other issues, um, but this guy was a drug dealer, and should that's who that sentencing, throw away the, just lock them, throw away the key, lock them up. Those are the people. But they were the ones who were uh, using the individuals who had the problems to make a living. Okay. But the Mac, there was a movie called The Mac. I'm talking about where you grew up watching it. You know, I like my guy Shaft though, Richard Roundtree. That was my guy. I used to have Shaft sideburns, and I had the leather jacket. Uh, I had the sideburns. He's a bad mother. Shut your mouth. I'm talking about Shaft. I'm not talking about the one, the new one. I'm talking about the one that came out with Isaac Hayes. Got the song, you know, Shaft. Yeah, he's a bad mother. Shut your mouth. You know, I'm talking about Shaft. Can you dig it? You say them all Korea knows. But I'm saying all of this to say that those characters who were drug dealers, um, you know, Bumpy in the movie Shaft, you know, uh, had an insurance company as a front policy, gambling, but drugs was his big thing of money. So anyway, okay, I've talked about that enough. So, but you understand, when you use it for individuals who have the mental health problems, um, then you're not. Influence of social trends on drug policy, punishment versus rehabilitation. We've already kind of exhausted this with our whole discussion tonight, but be aware of the fact that we're moving away from the war on drugs. Thank you, Lord. Um, to dealing with and they said back in that point it was deterrence, rehabilitation, incapacitation, and punishment or retribution. But little empathy was involved, and so now we're moving more towards rehabilitation. And so what came about was drug courts. I represented many individuals in drug court. Drug courts always took place in the evening, and uh, the place was packed. I mean, it was packed. It was long evenings when we were there. So you can imagine, I would represent people during the day in court, visit jails and stuff like that in prisons, and then have to go in the evening. And I'd have to have one of my partners to interview new people coming into the office. The point of matter is that so we were in drug court, and the point of drug court was to try to help individuals and dealing with the issues. And then this is just the history of drug courts, which actually evolved during the time um, when I was practicing. And you can see, I think this is supposed to open. Okay, it doesn't. But it starts out with showing how it really became a big thing. Um, Tampa, Florida, which is where one of my students was telling me his mom was a police officer. They started the drug courts operating, and then the drug courts went on. As this thing freezing? Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. So you see down here, and you see it starts all the way down. And you know what's very interesting? You know what's big about drug courts down in the Miami, Florida area? A lot of drugs came in from Cuba and other places into Florida as well. And so you had the drug courts down there, and then all over um, you could see how it increased. And then later, they said, "Oh, wait a minute, we got these courts. We're dealing with people using drugs. What about the mental health court?" And then started dealing with that. And you can read this over yourself there. So that's one of the approaches that is taken. And that's it. But I just want to show you the knowledge check quickly. And here it is. Patients with schizophrenia tend to have high rates of What? Anybody know which one of these? A, B, C, or D? Let's see if you're right. Somebody said D. Well, yeah, you have that weight loss. Probably not because you get the munchies and you eat a lot of caffeine use. So let's see if A is right. Oh, what happened? It didn't. Oh, I know what happened. My bad. Let's go back one more time because the answer is A. Let's go back. Okay. So now every time you go back to it, it moves it. So supposed to check it. I don't know why I didn't. I don't know what's happening with this thing. It's so wacky, but it is A. During the Obama administration, which pact was signed into law as related to sentencing? Anybody know? Was it the cocaine law? Was it fair sentencing, heroin bill, legalization, or marijuana? Which one? D, the cocaine law? Yeah, fair sentencing was the answer. Yeah, yeah, I remember that extremely well. I don't know why the other one didn't come up, but that was correct. Morbidity. Aha. Two or more disorders occurring in the same person, abuse of more than one type of drug. So it's when multiple individuals die from similar drug, two individuals with the same disorder. Which one is it? A, B, C, or D? We talked about this. Comorbidity. There it is. Somebody got it. Who got that? Is that Madison? Yeah, it's Madison time. Anyway, that's it. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. So all right. So that's it for tonight. Okay. So, oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm laughing because code word. Do I have it written on my forehead? Madison, are you reading my forehead? No. That's it. You're right. It is exactly that. It's mental health because that's the overall theme. But all of these fit within it. Rehabilitation, um, uh, uh, Madison. Do you know when I say, so give me, so just for those who, there's sometimes students say, you didn't say the key word or phrase. The key word or phrase is mental health. I really had a student one time tell me, I didn't say it, but out of 25 students, 22 got it and the others didn't. And then one said, I didn't say it. He said, but you didn't. He said, you said word or word. I say word or phrase. Anyway, but so do you know why I say Madison? Yeah, pay attention. That's right. Got to. Anybody see Sister Act? No, you didn't see Sister Act. Yep. Okay. You see Sister Act. You begin to see. that's the line in there. You got to wake up and pay attention. It's in one of the songs they do. And so that's what you got to do. But no, Madison, the reason I say Madison time, uh, there's an old song. It's a dance, and it went something like dun 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 dun. It's Madison time. Hit it. You ever heard that before? Okay, you Google it. Google it, but it's spelled uh, Madison. But yeah, it's Madison time, and it was a dance, a very old school. Korea, you know that? Do you know that? You know that the Madison time song? Oh, okay, the way you're saying it, I was gonna say, I don't think any of you guys are old enough to know about this one, because I was a kid. Okay. Yeah, your parents do. Yeah, yeah. But it's when they had it's when it was a good thing to say you have a record. But now you say you have a record. Oh, you do. What did you do? No, there was something I played on my, people don't even know what that is. Okay, I'm in overtime. Where it's like Bill Maher says, you like Bill Maher? Anybody watch Bill Maher? No, you don't watch Bill Maher? Okay, I'm just chatting now. So if you leave, you leave. But Bill Maher, he has a thing called overtime that he does on his show. So. But yes, I'll see you guys next week. Um, enjoy your week. Get all your work done. See ya. Oh God, that's funny.